Do you remember Vivien Leigh? Do you know about her bizarre age gap love interest? Or her biggest physical insecurity? And whatever happened to Vivien Leigh's daughter?
I haven't thought about that yet. I'll think about that tomorrow.
She was the belle of the ball, an icon of the classic Hollywood greatness, and a source of wild tales.
Each of them in different ways has contributed to your entertainment in the past.
From shouting matches to wild cover-ups and even affairs. Vivien Leigh's story of glamour and romance seriously had it all. So today we're gonna find out all that and more, including how one accident ruined 2 lives and the truth behind her difficult attitude at work.
She tells me you're planning on taking
If you make any jokes now, I'll kill you.
If you enjoy the video, please hit that thumbs up icon and make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss our next deep dive. But now, without further ado, let's ride this streetcar down memory lane. Did Vivien Leigh have large hands? It all started with her reciting Little Bo Peep for her mom's theater group, and her mind was made up. Thanks to the words of Vivian's own mother, we know she was uniquely determined growing up. Her mom said, quote, "She was single-minded. She was the only girl in the school to take ballet, for instance. She took it alone, the only one. I thought it was rather brave of her." Of course, that dance background helped make Vivian a legend of the stage, and on screen too, of course. Like that swing in Charleston she danced in Ship of Fools. Oh yeah, and she was fluent in both French and Italian. Talk about a classic underachiever. But along the way, there were some things she did want to change. Big changes, pun not intended. First up was her name, because the Hollywood legend we all know is Vivien Leigh, but she started out as Vivian Hartley. When Viv was 19, she married Lee Holman. She kept up trying to make it as an actor, but her agent wanted her to get a stage name and pushed for the name April Morn. But she wasn't sold, and so she decided on Lee after her husband. Then she actually changed the spelling of her first name from A-N to E-N for a softer sound. There was another change she couldn't wave away just like that. You see, Vivian was self-conscious about the size of her hands and she thought they were too big. That's why she was always wearing gloves and allegedly owned 150 pairs, which is almost as many Star Wars collectibles that I own. Despite Scarlett O'Hara being described in the original Gone with the Wind novel as having small hands, I guess they didn't hold that against Vivian.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
But boy, did that film still give her plenty of trouble in some far worse ways. How old was Vivien Leigh in the film Gone with the Wind? Leigh proved herself a catch for any casting team that recruited her for many reasons, with one unique being her near photographic memory.
I'm going on the stage. The agent and Mr. Prentice is fixing it all up.
Her mom played a game with her when she was a kid, letting her study a table arrangement and then having to recreate it. Oh boy, that sounds like a blast. By the time she was acting, she just needed to do 1 or 2 readings before she had it memorized. Vivian made it far enough to get a screen test, but here is another catch. She had a strong background in English theater, and doing stage drama is already its own beast, since there's so much importance on projection and careful blocking. You know, exaggerated movements and expressions. Because the back of the house has to see that sly grin or that quiet little gasp. Sure, the job was secured, but the fight was not over. Her workday lasted 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, across almost 130 days. Cammie Conlon, aka Bonnie Butler, remembered, quote, "I have candids of her taken on set. She is exhausted. She is exhausted. She was in every scene almost." One of Vivian's coping mechanisms of choice was smoking. She could go through 4 packs a day, and horribly, this wouldn't even be the worst health battle she'd have to weather. Who was Vivien Leigh in love with? Vivian's romance life was as much of a whirlwind as her career. It was 1936 when Vivien Leigh first saw Laurence Olivier in a play. The effect was instant, and she whispered to her friend in the neighboring seat, quote, "That's the man I'm going to marry." One small detail her friend helpfully pointed out, he was already married, and so was Vivian. This moral quandary didn't keep Vivian away from his dressing room just as he was leaving, and she planted a peck on the back of his neck.
I want to kiss you just once. Softly.
That little spark lit the flames of a messy affair between the two, with Vivian still married to Herbert Lee Holman and Lawrence with actress Jill Esmond. They were enabled while performing together in Fire Over England. Completing the scene of this epic drama was the 200 letters they sent to one another, and the forbidden passion just drips off the page with wet ink, especially when she calls him Larry Boy. Things ultimately ended in divorce for the lovebirds, but the letters continued, and so did the wild romance stories, only the names changed. Questions always surrounded her and Clark Gable, whose on-screen chemistry in Gone with the Wind was a key ingredient to the film's success. In reality, all warm and fuzzy feelings stopped when the cameras did. Vivian would be writing no saucy letters to her on-screen lover. In fact, she could barely even stand to kiss him. The whole thing was nauseating for Viv. Was it guilt because of the secret affair she was having with Laurence Olivier? No, not quite. It was because Clark had positively rancid breath.
Oh, if I just wasn't a lady, what wouldn't I tell that varmint?
A few years before Gone with the Wind, Gable developed a pretty serious gum disease. He even had to have some teeth pulled and needed dentures. The smell endured, helped along by his smoking habit, and so did Vivian's dismay. What happened to Vivien Lee's daughter? On top of a full career and extramarital affairs, Vivian also had parenthood to contend with, which was both magical and also a source of horrific trauma. Vivian had her child, a daughter named Suzanne Farrington, in 1933 with her first husband, Herbert Lee Holman. Vivian was just 19 and less than a year into marriage. Suzanne was also a whole month early, and Vivian endured a really tough delivery. But after it all, the only thing she wrote in her diary was, quote, "Had a baby, a girl." The Holman household had a nanny who helped take care of little Suzanne. While filming Caesar and Cleopatra, Vivian learned she was pregnant with Laurence Olivier's child. Well, she kept filming and did a scene in which she ran across a polished floor. It was the perfect, horrible recipe for disaster. And sure enough, Vivian slipped and crashed to the floor. And tragically, this caused her to miscarry. It was right after this that Vivian fell into a depression that would see her transform in front of people's eyes. She already wasn't in her daughter's life all that much, and this made things even more volatile. Suzanne was still raised in the spotlight through her dad, but the family's fame led to Suzanne and those around her sometimes feeling unsafe. By the 1950s, their relationship got fleshed out more, and it was Suzanne who would receive pretty much all her mother's estate. Suzanne herself, the only child of Vivien Leigh, died in 2015 at the age of 81. Sadly, she and Mom didn't have a ton of time after their reconciliation before being separated for good. What happened to Vivien Leigh? It's generally agreed that after the trauma of that miscarriage, Vivian changed in a pretty big and alarming way. She stayed up into the night, lashed out at people for seemingly no reason. She became infamously difficult to work with, and this was now on an entirely different level.
I'm not.
On top of that, she eventually had a nasty respiratory problem that morphed into tuberculosis. Her mental health reached a new low while filming Elephant Walk. It was supposed to be her project, but her condition deteriorated so badly, she had to be replaced with Elizabeth Taylor. That was in 1954, and Lee would never quite reach the same heights she'd once been. She managed to conquer her reputation of being difficult to work with, enough to find success back on the stage, but her revival was far too short-lived. Vivian's tuberculosis returned, and poor Viv's lungs gradually flooded. And Vivian Lee, heading from her bed to the bathroom, suffocated and fell to the floor. This icon of Hollywood's golden era was just 53 years old when she died on July 8, 1967. Through whirlwind marriages, tortured mental health, and an eventful career, Vivian Lee's first love was always work and perfecting her craft. A symbol of beauty, poise, and success. She also illustrates just how deeply inner demons can hurt everyone, and what a difference second chances can make. So, what was your personal favorite project Vivian Leigh was in? Who is your favorite Golden Age actor or actress? Did I forget something interesting about Vivian Leigh's life? Well, get in the comment section and tell us. Also, who should we cover next? If you enjoyed our Vivian Leigh deep dive, like I hope you did, please hit that thumbs up icon to show your support. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a memory. But most importantly, from all of us here at Do You Remember, we want to thank you very much for watching.